Yo, what's good? I'm Jess Murillo, longtime creative, marketing professional, philosophy enthusiast, and bald girl. Living through life's experiences, I've figured out our power is in our perspective and that we are the makers of our own reality. Experiencing a full life is all about the way you look at things and how you use those ideas to create your world. On this podcast, we're going to dive into different theories, stories, and philosophies that help you peel back the layers and expose things differently. Showing up here means breaking you free from the shell that has been keeping you small. It's kind of like if a marketing teacher with a crafting hobby and passion for philosophy started a podcast. So if you can wrap your head around that, buckle up, sit back, open your mind, and get ready to break bare of the limiting mindsets that keep us from making the best of this life. This is the Breaking Bare Podcast. Hello, beautiful souls. It is I, Jess, and I'm recording this on the eve of my 30th birthday. Yes, the last day of my 20s, I have been recording and editing podcasts, but all with great excitement. I thought I'd share a few words of reflection on my 20s, as well as what I hope for going into my 30s. And maybe you can relate. Y'all, bear with me because this is really a timeline of my 20s, and I just kind of lay it all out there so we getting to know each other real quick. Here it goes. Friends, I wanted to take a moment and disclaim that there are some triggers throughout this episode. I do talk a bit about suicidal ideology. Suicidal ideology is a slippery slope, and if you have thoughts of suicide, please dial 988 and get the help you deserve. To begin, looking back on this decade of my life, my 20s have been a time of epic growth, tedious contrast, as well as some solid wins. It started out a bit bittersweet, given the month before turning 20, I watched my closest uncle lose his fight to cancer, which was so profound. And then a year later, graduating with a bachelor's degree from Tufts University, just a few months after turning 21, it was this weird time of like grief and also achievement, which is such a parallel. It was a prime of my life, however. Notice how I say a prime because I believe we go through many primes, and 19 to 21 and a half was definitely a high point in my life. I was traveling every 4 months or so between Boston and Seattle and just really having the time of my life. My days were filled with public transportation, city exploring, study, and friends, and short-lived romances, and it was all so magical that it hurt so hard when the following years would be riddled with so much heartache and trauma, as I literally shed the person I was and rather unwillingly transformed into this completely different person. Moving back home directly after college is something that I don't necessarily regret, but it was something I wish I had thought through more because I had such a codependent belief around my family, which, wasn't, those beliefs weren't true. But given them, I rushed back home to aid them and misread that the complete family dynamic had shifted since I'd been gone. And not only that, but my own experience of having my own thoughts and personality beyond my nuclear family while I was away for college was worth so much more to me than the adapted personality I had created to survive my childhood. And I say survive because I believe it is all our responsibilities to survive our own childhoods, no matter how privileged or abusive they are. I do believe moving home was premature and it accelerated my hair loss because of the brash adjustment that it was, re-entering a changed dynamic, being a changed person, the stress drove me so much that it affected everything. And when I left work to go home, which was a totally different degree of toxicity, my work was, but I won't get into that. But I left later than was normal. Like I wouldn't leave work until 8 p.m. because I didn't want to get home until after everyone had gone to bed. And I mean, all around it came down to just like never feeling safe in the beginning of my 20s, like 21 and a half to 25, 26. I just never felt like I could be myself, which for years, I mean, I felt that even before, like in childhood and adolescence, I definitely felt like I could never really be myself. But it was just harsh going from college, where, I mean, self expression is like the name of the game, to going back to this, like, no, 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 this isn't who you are. What? Yeah, all of those lessons were so necessary to just realize that that's not how you get through life. You can't get through life being a different person for other people. That lesson came later, but before I really learned that, all of those feelings really pushed me into a relationship that I knew was wrong from the get go, but it was a beautiful relationship that taught me a lot and was a much needed escape from that whole family dynamic. And it was so beautifully platonic, and the nature of it nursed me at some of my lowest moments, and I'm forever grateful for it. And it really made me a better woman and equipped me with the necessary tools of being a better partner in general, and proved to myself that I could compromise and coexist at the same time. The transformation that was losing my hair pushed me into needing new perspectives and new ventures, and the instability that was my career and the fragility of my mental health plagued me with an all consuming darkness. And in like a last ditch effort to save myself, literally, I cut ties with everything I knew and I headed back to the last place I was happy around like 24. And, I went back to Boston. Now, in Boston, I had it made up in my head that Boston was going to fix everything and I would be happy here and it was my place. And I will say, where I couldn't get any callbacks in Seattle, like professionally, I found my resume with my alma mater on it, got lots of callbacks in Boston, so I was feeling better, but to no avail. And I could not find work to save my life. I could go to these interviews and really knock it out of the park, and I wouldn't get hired for like ludicrous reasons that even the interviewer had problems with. I'm like remembering a few, and it was for this photography job, and they were like, "Well, you don't have a car." And I was like, "Well, I moved to Boston because I can rely on the public transportation, and I didn't want to have the responsibility of my car any longer like I had to in Seattle." And I remember this so vividly because I wanted this job so bad. Another one, which was another great job that I wanted so bad, was like creating this photography program for underprivileged youth that the city of Boston put on for its Parks and Recreation department. The man wanted to hire me so badly and tried to convince his superiors to overturn the rule that all city employees must live within city limits. And since I had a Cambridge address, which, if any of you know Boston, you know that Cambridge is right across the river. And like sometimes it's faster to get from Cambridge to Boston than it is from Boston to Boston. But anyway, I spiraled after being rejected for like just impossible reasons. And for not being able to find the stability that I craved and the purpose that I needed to just reverse out of depression and the camaraderie that I once had in Boston. And I found myself in a very, very dark place. Now, it wasn't all bad. I did get my first teaching job in Boston. The problem was it only paid me $500 a month, which was not enough to survive on. It bought like groceries twice. So on the days I would teach, I found myself having fairly disturbing thoughts like maybe if I just took these pills, or if I just stepped in front of this bus, it could be so fast. And I was not feeling myself. Really, I was seeking relief. I felt like I had had a bad rap since like 22, and I was 24 going on 25 in that moment. So, like 3 years of bad luck, it seemed endless. Although, in retrospect, it seems very small. But all of those bad thoughts changed after I confided in a friend, one of the only friends who still spoke to me in Boston, about my suicidal ideology, and he drowned within hours of me telling him. Literally died. I'm laughing because I'm over it and I've healed from that, but it was a mind trip when it happened. Now, this, out of all events in my 20s, this was the climax for sure. It is the one event that seems to have turned everything around, because it immediately snapped me out of my depression and made me feel terrible for even considering ending it all. Because life became precious in the snap of a finger. Dan was so young, and his transformation was tragic and sudden and also beautiful in a weird way, that it really triggered me to move and to just change again. It was just like, I just have to get out of here. So I moved to Houston, where I'm recording this from. I moved here a few weeks before my 25th birthday. Honestly, I moved to Houston because I had no other options. I had run out of money. I couldn't go back to Seattle because I had estranged myself from my family and broke up with my boyfriend, and I felt I had no other people there. So my only option was to reach out to my mom, who had lived in Texas since I was a teenager, and ask if I could refocus in the South. And a few days after Hurricane Harvey hit, I flew down and just tried to process everything that had just happened. My mind was definitely, though, kind of like WTF in this moment. And it was an uncomfortable feeling knowing that I was in a new chapter and halfway through my 20s, and they hadn't gone anything like I had thought they would.
Hey there, Maker. Feeling a little heavy lately? The world can do that to you. Whatever it is that's bugging you, I wanted to tell you about a new corner of the internet where you can lay your burdens down, unconditionally. If you find yourself needing an outsider's perspective, or you feel like you have to get something off your chest or hash something out, but you don't really know who to turn to, I get it, and I've been there. I'm no expert, but I do know the loneliness of not having a shoulder to lean on or an unbiased opinion, and I don't want that for anyone. So I'd like to invite you to Dear Jess, a new corner of the internet where you can virtually scream into a void or get a thoughtful response to something you're ruminating over by yours truly. If there's something grinding your gears or stuck in your craw, let it all out here. I'll lend an ear and respond however you choose, or not. Simply fill out the form, press submit, and wait for your reply. Don't be shy, all topics are welcome. Give it to me, I can take it. So if you are interested in sharing some secrets, visit www.ladyandlionco.com and click on the tab, Dear Jess. Pardon the interruption, but I wanted to share a mindful moment brought to you by Lady and Lion Co. Lady and Lion Co. is my lifestyle brand all about balancing our ego with our higher self. Part of balancing these parts of ourselves is practicing mindfulness. If you're not familiar with mindfulness, you're in for a real treat. Take a moment to experience it. Wherever you are, I want you to take in a deep breath and hold it for 3 seconds. Now release. As you're releasing your breath, take a moment to think of how connected your breath is to the rest of the earth. You just inhaled oxygen, which was filtered by trees, and you turned it into carbon dioxide for the trees to in turn breathe. You just fed a tree. By supporting the life of a tree, you are supporting the hundreds of animals and ecosystems existing in that tree, the nutrients that tree produces for the other plants around it, the products generated from that tree, such as teas, herbs, spices, oils, papers, lumber, and so much more. With this one breath, you are supporting life, and you should give yourself permission to feel that power. You are breathing with a tree, which is evidence the universe is on your side. As you go about your day, stop for a moment and think about how your breath is giving life to not just you, but hundreds of species across the globe. You are magic. You are harmony. And when you feel your life in sync with the rest of Earth, life seems to make sense. Enjoy breathing life into the universe today. For more moments like this one and creative content, visit www.ladyandlionco.com. That's ladyandlionco.com.
I had to grieve the first half of my 20s because I thought it was going to be this really fun time of self expression and exploration and like a Friends episode. And that was in there for sure in little moments, but for the most part, the first half of my 20s was heavy with thick contrast and total expansion, just constant state of transformation. They were heartbreaking and traumatic, but so necessary. I always say to people who are younger than me that every year of your 20s, you change so much that even someone who's like a year older than you think that you're like similar age, but I feel like a year of your 20s is like 10 years of any other decade. I don't know if that's true. Tell me, but I feel like childhood went way longer and my childhood was filled, to the brim with drama and family issues and all that stuff, and it still felt like a lifetime, whereas like my 20s, like every year felt like a lifetime. From 21 to 22, I felt like I had lived one lifetime. Like I felt like 1 year was 10. Shortly after I moved to Texas, I started working at this hip new restaurant in my community, and I quickly started managing it, and it was there that I met Carlos, and we fell in love fast. He was really such a bright light for me in such a dark time, and so much of his attitude and energy helped me remember who I was and who I wanted to be. Because after everything that had happened, I didn't know either of those things. And that was such a beautiful feeling. He was so, and I mean, he still is, accepting of me and willing to understand. And I had never encountered that in anyone. Since we don't speak the same language, the extra time he took to hear me and then communicate with me was so beautiful and fulfilling, and it was easy to get whisked away into romance with him because it was attention I had never really received before. It gave me the fulfillment and the courage to pursue the career I thought I wanted. And we've been on so many life adventures together over the last 5 years. It's been a journey for sure. We've already gone through so many life altering things beyond our control. It kind of amazes me. Carlos is the first decision I made without the influences of friends or family. And getting married felt so liberating in the beginning. It felt like freedom. And I highly recommend, if you are considering getting married, make sure it's a decision that you make on your own without influence. When something is solely your responsibility, you have no one else to blame for it going wrong or right. It is so much more empowering and life giving. Anyway, the last 3 years have been me really owning my career and finding stability in the corporate world and proving to myself that I could do it, but giving myself the grace to realize it's not for me and not who I am, and finding the courage to quit that. It's also been the last 3 years kind of me finding myself because I mean, the first half was me completely evolving into a new person, um, learning the rope, lost in this huge relationship towards the middle. You do kind of lose yourself when you're starting a relationship, like a long term relationship. And so it's kind of been me branching off from that and being like, no, we don't have to go everywhere together. We don't have to eat the same things. We are two people choosing to be together rather than one whole person. It's been me defining, okay, like all these things that I've learned and putting together everything, just a person, really. It's just been about my soul really focusing is the right word, word I'm looking for. My 20s have been a series of me finding the courage to quit the things that aren't me. And it has been terrifying and exhilarating and hard, but also incredibly enlightening. And I feel like I have good tools to get through the mud that sometimes is life. And so going into my 30s, I have this beautiful feeling of coming home and really stepping into my power that I'm sure is a common feeling when turning 30. I feel better prepared and motivated, but not in this bright eyed and bushy tail way that I went into my 20s. It's with a savvy that I've been waiting for. And what I hope for my 30s, which I didn't really for my 20s, but what I hope mostly for my 30s is that I can really start serving others and using all those trials and lessons that I went through in my 20s as tools and examples rather than taking them for granted, which is where things like this podcast come in. I really want this to be a resource of all kinds of information that really serves you to think outside of the box and find a bit more comfort in yourself and your life. Rome was not built in a day, and I can say that with certainty. It has been a decade of lessons and hard knocks, and I don't have it all figured out. I am for sure not the old wise master, but I have a lot of courage and kindness, and I know that those two things are what people need when they are stuck or in a dark place. And I am so willing to extend my hand into the pit and say, it's all right. We've all been down there. Now let's figure out how to get you to where you want to be, and we'll start by pulling you out of this pit. And it's really embodying what I wished for when I was going through all the things.
And honestly, all of this kind of summarizes just the concept of Lady and Lion Co. and how there's a lady and a lion in all of us. The term lady is a societal word for a woman. It's like a higher idealized version of ourselves. And then lion is that ego, that animal part of us that is just as necessary for our survival. And there's this very fine line between them, and it stands for balancing those two and calling upon whatever one you need in the moment and quieting the other when you don't need it. So, with that, I thank you so much for listening. Now that we know each other, we're besties, and I'm kidding, but if you've made it this far, thank you. And I hope I didn't dish too much. Trust me, I didn't, because that was just the Cliff Notes version. And as we get to know each other more, I will dive deeper into some of those details, but that was the highlight reel, basically, of the last 10 years, and here I am, ready to deliver you content weekly in your ears. I'm 30. I feel so ready for this. I've been wanting to do this since like 2018. And I'm just here. I'm like ready to do this. So here's to 30. Thank you so much for listening. And if you are interested in getting to know me more, or if you want to wish me a happy birthday, you can head over to Lady and Lion Co.'s Instagram. And that's just at Lady and Lion Co. All right. Until next week, I'll catch you later. Thanks for tuning in to the Breaking Bear podcast. If you could do me a solid and think of one person in your life who needs this message, could you forward this episode to them with a loving note referencing why you think they should hear this and that you're thinking of them? You would absolutely make my life and be contributing to Serious Good Vibes. My goal and vision for this podcast is to help empower people by facilitating connections and sharing perspectives, so people don't feel so alone in their experience. But I cannot do that without your help in spreading the word. There's a reason you heard this today. So if it raised your vibe, then this is a perfect opportunity to spread love and give the gift of higher consciousness. Thanks again for listening, and as always, I am sending you so much love. I know I just said vibes like 3 times, but I meant it each time. Anyway, hope to hear from you soon, and until next time.